Good evening. You're flying with Pod Squadron podcasts. All wings report in. This is Pod Job standing by.
Pod Job, this is Pod Tracer standing by.
All ships to attack formation, mission objectives to talk about Star Wars in movies, streamings, animation, books, themed experiences, and your art and inspiration from a galaxy far, far away. Today's flight plan includes Obi-Wan prepping for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney+. And with that in mind, the Mortis arc, the 3-episode arc from season 3 of the Clone Wars. And for all of you out there, all comm channels are open. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Find us on YouTube. Like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you know when we have new content. But first, I'll be your squad leader for today. I'm Andy Lowe, aka the Chinese Pirate, director, storyteller, puppeteer, performer, and fight choreographer. On my wing is Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy, also known as Hot Nerd Girl, and I will be active in the chat, so come chat with me.
And we are missing our other two wing people, Lexi and Jason, who are not here today. But we are just one squad in the fleet. We're part of the Geekish Network. That's right here on YouTube and on Facebook on the Geekish Network. As foils to attack position, we're going in. Hello, everyone. Well, we are back from a long hiatus. We are going to continue to go bi-weekly right now until the Kenobi series is back on. We'll have a couple more episodes as we're prepping for the Kenobi series, and also a episode to prep for the upcoming Star Wars Celebration, which will be in May. But until then, we're just going to start off and do tonight's episode. We have with us a guest host. I'd like to welcome Kenji Donville. Kenji Donville is an actor, filmmaker, seasoned martial artist, nerd enthusiast, and comic impressionist based here in Los Angeles, California. He's currently enrolled as a student of psychology at Santa Monica College and is a self-proclaimed Star Wars fanatic. The character he identifies with most in the franchise has always been Obi-Wan Kenobi, and an appreciation that was only deepened when he discovered that his role was originally inspired by Toshiro Mifune. In fact, Toshiro Mifune was originally slated to be the actor that George Lucas wanted in that role originally. But welcome, Kenji. Kenji, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Right on. So tell us about your relationship with Star Wars.
Well, gosh, I mean, where do I begin? Like, I think I was in like the first or second grade. My friend, I think it was my friend Ben, he told me like, hey, have you heard about this thing called Star Wars? And of course, at the time I was like, I heard of Star Trek because of my dad, but I didn't heard of Star Wars yet. And so like he introduced me to like all the different characters, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And I, as you can see, it's only deepened as the years have gone by. I absolutely adore it. And like just the way, just Obi-Wan, the way that character is just everything about him. It's just everything that he encapsulates is just absolutely amazing. It's so awesome. So like he's always been the character that I always gravitated towards the most. So I'm really happy you guys brought me on board for this one.
Right on. Well,
favorite character because your friend was old Ben Kenobi.
You know what? He is the one that introduced me to the whole series. So who knows? He is my old Ben Kenobi. I didn't even put those two together. You know what? I gotta let him know that. I'm sure he'd be happy to hear that. Actually,
that crazy old wizard. Well, welcome aboard. We love having you on board. Someone else to talk as we start to prep for the upcoming Obi-Wan series, which is directed by Deborah Chow. But before we kind of move on into that, Tracy, there's a lot of buzz in terms of tributes to a long-standing Star Wars contributor. You want to talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, and actually, but right before the show started, Jolan brought it up in the chat. So, Alan Ladd Jr. He was a film industry executive and producer, and he is probably best known, at least in the geek world, for being the person who greenlit Star Wars. And I just saw Jolan's message in the chat that his reward for greenlighting it was being fired. But because of that, he later established the Ladd Company. So, and he headed that. So, hey, it all worked out.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, he was the president of 20th Century Fox from 1976 through 1979. Uh, so still, I mean, a legacy producer, and of course, great legacy for his contributions to Star Wars.
Yep.
So may he rest in peace. May the Force be with him. All right. Well, we've got a show today. It's been a while since we've been on. A lot of stuff has happened. Particularly, we were just talking about the Obi-Wan series, which is coming up on Disney Plus. There was a trailer that was released 3 weeks ago. And we thought we'd just take a little bit of time to kind of talk about that. It included a lot of different things that, of course, everyone has been abuzz about. And actually there have been re-edits for television that actually include a shot of Darth Vader, which is our kind of our first shot of the Vader costume in this time period that we've seen. What are some other stuff that we've seen? What did you guys think of the look of Rupert Friend, as opposed to Rupert Foe? No, sorry, Rupert Friend as the Grand Inquisitor.
I just realized that was Rupert Friend. I knew he looked familiar, but I couldn't figure out where from. And I think it's because with all the makeup, or maybe like he's gotten older and his face has gotten more square or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's true that I think the character model and the original voice actor was Jason Isaacs, who you might remember as Papa Malfoy. He was also in Star Trek Discovery. But unfortunately, he was not available, and they went with Rupert Friend, who has a much rounder head. What did you think of our first appearance of the Grand Inquisitor, Kenji?
Honestly, I think I'm really excited because I actually thought he was I thought he was a great villain in the Rebels series. So the fact that he's making an actual live action appearance makes me excited, because that means that could easily open us up to even more live action versions of legends / now canon series characters like Thrawn and stuff like that. So because of that, I'm excited. I know there's probably going to be people out there saying his head isn't the right shape. He doesn't look right. Or basically have the whole Cad Bane thing all over again. But I'm so stoked, and I think Sung Kang plays one of the other Inquisitors too. So, I'm so he's my favorite part of the Fast and Furious franchises. So I'm so stoked to see him in this.
Wait, yes. Rupert Friend was in Fast and the Furious?
No, Sung Kang, who's playing the fifth brother.
I was like, that's weird.
And of course, this is 4 or 5 years before his other appearance in Star Wars Rebels, right, where we see him with the Seventh Sister. But yes, that is very exciting. What other? We also meet the Inquisitor Reva, who is we're seeing images of her for the first time. What do you guys think of her?
She looks like such a badass. I'm excited about her.
I'm really curious because she has the least gray skin of every Inquisitor we've ever seen. Also, she's the first Inquisitor we've seen that does not have the spinning circular double-bladed lightsaber. And I wonder why that is.
To blend in.
To blend into
crowds while she's hunting Jedi.
I mean, perhaps. I mean, her costume isn't the most blendy indie thing.
Well, that's true.
I mean, I know that she's probably one of the more humanoid Inquisitors that we've had. I know that we had another one with in the Fallen Order video game series. I forgot what the Inquisitor's name was in that one. I'm drawing a blank, but I know that she was basically a former Jedi Padawan that got turned to evil. But we got her, but of course her storyline ended up ending pretty quickly in that game. So I'm actually really excited to see where this one is going with, because each of them has a unique story that's pretty dense and juicy. So I really want to know what her story is, because it seems like she's kicking a lot of ass in what we've seen so far. So I'd really love to see what we're gonna see her do.
But she is also a beautiful woman, and they usually don't like to ugly up beautiful women very much. They don't have no problem ugly up the guys, but the women, gotta have that sex appeal.
Well, and there's nothing sexier than holding a public execution somewhere on Tatooine. But that said, we do see her presumably hanging someone, because we see some feet hang in the air, and a very scared Joel Edgerton as Uncle Owen who returns.
Yeah, I was so happy. It's kind of crazy. Like, I love seeing like those like bit part like characters that were probably like no one would have ever even like thought about it probably at first, being like, like whatever. But like the fact that we finally got like the fact that we're seeing like they're actually like we're staying true to her, like no, we got these actors to play Owen and Baru, so we're going to bring them back. Like the fact that they're still staying true to that, like trying to maintain as much of that continuity as possible, I think is fantastic.
And they've actually aged naturally.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, also, and honestly, I think I read an interview with Deborah Chow, who was speaking his praises, that he is really emotionally grounding, like very much an acting rock in this. So I'm very excited to see what he brings to this. Let's see, what are some other things?
Wasn't the gal who played Baru, wasn't she in part of that Nexium thing?
In what?
Wasn't the girl who played Baru involved in that Nexium thing?
What's Nexium?
Nexium, the cult.
I am not familiar with this.
What? The girl from Smallville? She was like in a cult with this guy named like Kevin something or whatever.
Right, I heard about that.
Oh, the actress was?
The girl who played Baru, like somehow she was like involved in that Nexium thing. I don't think she like went like.
Huh.
She was like.
I don't know about that.
I didn't realize that was her. Well, I knew about the girl from Smallville, but I didn't realize that was her too.
Well, I don't think it's the same actress as the girl from Smallville.
No,
that's Allison Mack, right?
No, it's not Allison Mack. No. Yeah. Well, to the
Googles. Let's see here. Other cool things we've seen. We also get to see Obi-Wan apparently living destitute in a blue cave, which is interesting because, of course, it does not seem like he has his hut, or maybe this is a different place that he is like using for meditation, but I don't know. I mean, look, I kind of really like the idea that he's kind of, fulfilling a certain level of self-penance, kind of still tortured over everything that happened in Revenge of the Sith. Any thoughts about that shot? I guess not.
I'm looking up Aunt Baru.
You really want to know about this cult?
What was the question?
just shots of Obi-Wan living in a cave and not in his hut that we saw.
And with his little binoculars spying on a young child.
Oh yes,
not creepily.
Well, okay, that's also fun because then that means we're seeing 10-year-old Luke, who seems to be playing pod racer with his little goggles, as Kenji is miming right now. If you're listening to audio, you cannot see.
It brought me so much. It brought me so much joy watching that trailer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that was. Okay, I am definitely someone who has grown to appreciate Episode 1 as I have gotten older and stuff, and so that was definitely a great little callback to seeing young Anakin. We also have some shots of a new kind of city planet that they're calling Dayu. Now, we've also seen some of these images in a little bit more detail because Entertainment Weekly, at the same time as they released the trailer, they released some images and stills of some of the characters and some of the planets. This is said to be kind of a planet that is inspired by Hong Kong, which is kind of a gritty, old city with a lot of kind of urban mystery and mystique to it.
It's got a little bit of a Blade Runner feel.
Yeah, kind of that cyberpunk. There are some eagle-eyed folks who are saying that the shot of the Grand Inquisitor might have a maybe Captain Rex or a clone standing in front of him.
No, it's not the Inquisitor. It's a droid.
Oh,
you see the back of what looks like some kind of trooper with like kind of a taller droid with like a cylindrical-ish head,
Yes.
and they're saying that the way the helmet looks from the back, and for some reason you see its crotch for a second, and it looks like it looks more like clone trooper armor than it does stormtrooper armor. So maybe it might be Rex.
Well, and we do know that there have been folks who have spotted.
You're thinking Echo.
Huh?
You're thinking about Echo. There's another scene where the Grand Inquisitor is talking to somebody, and it almost looks like Echo from behind. How Echo has like the almost like headphone looking things and is bald.
Well,
you know?
no, I mean, basically, if you look at the screen cap, it's just a bald guy who people are wondering that the bald head looks kind of like Demura Morrison from behind.
I don't know. I think we're gonna definitely see some clones in
Yeah.
there. I don't whether it's Bad Batch or former troopers. I don't know, but I think we're
Yeah.
gonna see some.
I would hope. I'd like to see Echo. I think that'd be great. It also could very well also be Lobot from Empire Strikes Back, because hey, how the hell did he start working for Lando? I mean,
Well, there you go. Yeah.
how did he become a part of servitude where now he has this headset where like now he must listen to everything that this man says? Like, I mean, it's really interesting when you think about it.
Well, there's, I'm sure, a lot more news to come as we get closer to release on May 25th. Of course, before that, we have May the 4th, which I'm betting they're going to release another trailer at the beginning of that month. And of course, Star Wars Celebration, which will be towards the end of May, May 25th. Or no, May, wait, when, shoot, I forgot when Celebration.
That's gonna be my first big convention since COVID, and I'm freaking out about it. Oh wait, are we done? Are we done talking about the trailer?
I think we've covered, unless you guys
Okay.
got anything else you want to bring up.
Kevin, you can come back.
No. Yeah, so I mean, this is what we're doing right now, right? Is that there's a lot of excitement around the release of Obi-Wan. We're going to revisit some major Obi-Wan stories. We've talked about a few things. We've talked about the Obi-Wan undercover arc from Clone Wars, where Obi-Wan fakes his death, and it actually kind of drives a wedge between him and Anakin a little bit, because Anakin actually believes he's dead. There is the Obi-Wan Legends novel, which the people are speculating that did a lot of inspiration for the upcoming series. We might try to see if we can cover the Crystal Caper on Utapau. Utapau, of course, is actually the planet where the Grand Inquisitor hails from originally, but it is the sinkhole planet which you see at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, where Obi-Wan faces off against General Grievous. But there was a unfinished story arc that was about 3 or 4 episodes that was supposed to be season 6 in Clone Wars, and was never finished, but the story reels were made available for a short time, and we might cover that because they definitely hold some character moments that really build the tension for Anakin as he, reels from the loss of Ahsoka when she leaves the Order, and the wedge that grows between him and Obi-Wan. So if there's other things you'd like us to cover or talk about as we lead up to, what Kathleen Kennedy has been calling the rematch of the century between Anakin and Obi-Wan, please let us know in the chat. We're going to cover some of these other things. But first of all, we are going to cover the Mortis arc.
Wait, before we move on,
yeah,
her and her husband were members of NXIVM, and they left in 2017 and became outspoken about how awful it was before the story broke. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, well, that's good. She's not crazy. That's
out of my brain. Out of my brain.
She was a little bit. But then she got out of it.
That's fair. Right, the Mortis arc. So, this is probably my third time watching. Third or fourth time watching this arc, like focused on it. Kenji, how many times have you watched the Mortis arc? Would you say?
I probably like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
I think it's got a lot of like. It's a really juicy one as far as like it helps kind of like it gives the Force a face,
Sure.
because we've always kind of like. It's Force is kind of like this mystical thing where it's like, oh, it's wispy, and every now and then you'll see it like kind of like like kind of like manifest in a different way for like video games and stuff. But this is like the first time you get to see it take like on like a truly physical form. You know, that's not just like some weird like force vision. It's like it's really awesome. I think it's really cool.
How about you, Tracy? Had you watched this arc before?
I had seen it exactly once, about an hour and a half before we came on the air. And because of that, I thought maybe that the three Force people were going to be kind of like the statues in Loki. And then they were not.
Well, okay, since you are newest to this story arc, why don't you start us off with kind of your quick impressions, kind of from the get-go, just very raw since you just watched it.
Oh, very raw. I mean, I think that it's kind of a classic mythological storyline of having, you know, a sibling that's good and one that's bad. I mean, talking about Loki, you know, it's kind of a Loki Thor, but even more defined than that, since Loki and Thor have kind of shades of gray and kind of go back and forth a little bit. But the idea of the son killing the father, both in mythology and in Star Wars, is quite prevalent. So I can't say that surprised me. I was a little bit surprised that he's like, hey, you're the chosen one. Can you like take care of my kids and like give up your whole life and not do anything else with that power except for babysit? That would not be my first choice either if I was the chosen one. But I think you can tell it's kind of a little 3-episode side quest thing, and I tend to like those. I think that they offer a lot of background into, or more insight into the universe as a whole. So I really appreciated that. Like Kenja was saying, all these different manifestations of the Force, and you never quite know like what the next one is gonna be. So it was really interesting. I don't know that they're necessarily like the gods of the Force so much as people, you know, a family that just happens to be extremely Force sensitive. But as far as like a 3-episode story arc, I thought it was, I think it would be kind of a good introduction for people who are undecided about whether or not to watch the Clone Wars, kind of like Blink is for Doctor Who. You know, like you can watch this, and if you like it, then go watch the rest. And if you don't, then this is not the show for you.
Well, so just to give a little bit of background, right? So we're talking about season 3, episodes 15 through 17. This was the Mortis arc, which George Lucas personally oversaw along with Dave Filoni. You know, and a lot of the themes and the characters introduced have kind of permeated some of like the farthest reaching, you know, big concepts around the Force. I think their goal of this was to create something mythic. You know, of course, you know, Star Wars itself is very much rooted in the James Campbell. I almost said Bruce Campbell. The you know you know the whole hero's journey iconography. But I think their goal with this was to really kind of root, well, what is the mythology of the Force in universe? And we are introduced to these 3, you know, we'll call them Force gods, but they call themselves, I think they call themselves overlords, overlords of the Force.
Typical.
One is the father, and it would seem that his kind of main, like mode of operation is he's always seeking balance. He's seeking to kind of control his children, who are the daughter and the son. The daughter, who is neither good nor evil, but she always acts selflessly. And the son, who is also supposedly neither good nor evil, but always acts selfishly. And so you have these kind of iconic representations of kind of the core of humanity throughout the Star Wars universe that kind of play out this very mythic, iconographic, so to speak, morality play around the Force and what is the destiny of the galaxy, and of course how our heroes, who are Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka, kind of fit into this. And a lot of really interesting things happened to these characters as a result. Um, um, uh, so Kenji, so you had some interesting things that you were talking about the father and his connection with one of the characters. You felt you want to talk about that a little bit?
So I've been so big when you see like the story about it, it's like, you know, how the father has to oversee the balance between like the son and the daughter. And like when I think about it, I kind of see it as like how I kind of see like the father, like you kind of see this kind of end up echoing throughout the entire Star Wars like sagas, like, you know, like all the different stories, like, you know, with like Rey and Kylo and like these different diodes of the Force and stuff. And I feel like this one, the case is like the father is Obi-Wan, is like how he has to like observe, you know, the son clearly being, you know, Anakin. And I feel like in his opposite in this case is probably Padme, because what we end up seeing in the Mortis episode with how the son accidentally murders the daughter and all that stuff, I see that kind of like how Anakin murders, you know, Padme. Mm-hmm. While, well, I guess I'm like not really. There's arguments to say if you whether he really killed her or if she died from a broken heart, but that's another one. But you know, the entire time you have like Obi-Wan who's having to like oversee, you know, both of this the entire time. I feel like the father in this case, in this echo that happens in like the poetry that George Lucas likes to talk about, like in this echo, Obi-Wan is the father.
Right. That's cool. I mean, you know, the thing is, this is so much rooted in kind of symbolic themes, right? We do see a lot of things that we see in a lot of mythology, kind of like what Tracy was talking about of, you know, one generation of gods trying to overtake the previous generation. Or there are kind of symbolic acts, right? Like this idea that the daughter can only act in ways that are selfless. Like to the point that she cannot go
give that to the girl, of course. Yeah.
Well, that and also, right, I mean, another theme where you have mythic personifications of absolute feminine, absolute masculine, right, which are, you know, you see in a lot of different mythology as well, right? You know, someone who's a caretaker and a nurturer versus someone who is a dominator, right? There's a lot of speculation in terms of what the meaning behind all of this is. And Dave Filoni himself has actually even said, you know what, I could tell you what we intended by this. However, all of your speculation is a lot more fun. And I think the more cryptic, and he's saying the more cryptic it is, the more you get out of this. Which I find really interesting.
That's a very Dave Filoni answer.
Very Dave Filoni.
God damn it, David.
Do you
well,
think, do you think
go
you
ahead.
could bring them into one of the live action shows?
I mean, I think it's very possible too, right? I mean, the next time we saw them, they were paintings on the wall of the Jedi Temple, where Ezra finds the world between worlds.
That's
right?
the picture I posted earlier today. Yeah.
And of course, you know, again, it deepens this mythology and this mystique around who are they, what do they represent? Did this whole thing, everything in the story arc, did it actually happen? Or is this like premonitions or symbolic representations of what is to come, right? I mean, like, you know, famously, you know, in terms of, you know, what Kenji's talking about in terms of connections between the father, the son, and the daughter, right? The father, of course, you know, does seem to have a connection as, you know, the even-keeled one, like, you know, bearded Obi-Wan. But of course, like a huge moment in, I think it's the third episode, where the son reveals Anakin's future to him, which ultimately, you know, makes Anakin turn into Vader kind of prematurely. Like even they're even careful about how he speaks, and he starts talking like Vader and stuff. You guys want to talk about that?
Well, but then the father erased his memory, which is always a very convenient thing that people do.
Sure.
I just realized that we had the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghosts in that episode.
It's all because of this man here. It's because of this man right here.
Yes.
This
Wolf.
man here is causing so much. I mean, he causes a lot of good, but also so much confusion right now. He's done a lot for this universe, but damn you, Dave. Damn you, Dave.
So for those of you who are listening and not watching, Kenji held up his Black Series action figure of his name is Trapper Wolf. Is that right?
Yes, it's Trapper Wolf.
Trapper Wolf.
In canon name.
The in canon X-wing pilot name for Dave Filoni. Well, so another, speaking of Dave Filoni, right? This is also the source of kind of Ahsoka's greater connection to the Force as well, right? Because ultimately, when the Son uses her and taps into her insecurities and kind of, she doesn't exactly go dark, but she just, kind of every insecurity is kind of,
I don't know. She goes pretty dark.
I mean, she goes dark, but it's not like she turns to the dark side. It's more like she just gets super insecure. I mean, like everything that she gets angry about Anakin is really more like, wedge issues between them, right? Where she kind of leans into them. But this is also where Ahsoka is ultimately killed and revived by sacrifice by the daughter.
Well, she was going to die anyway. She was going to die anyway. The daughter was.
Right.
They just took like her last little like life force and used it to. Oh, where did somebody was saying that that the father needed Anakin in order to make that happen, but Anakin couldn't do it without the father being like almost like a puppet master for it. But that this is what makes Anakin so determined to try and bring Padme back, because he knows that it can be done.
Oh, interesting.
But he can't do it himself.
Oh, that's interesting.
Dang.
That is very interesting.
Greedy just gets thicker. This greedy just
his
keeps getting
two goals, right? Like once he kind of becomes Vader, his two goals are to get Obi-Wan and to bring back Padme, right?
Right.
So, and it's always about him. It's a very selfish, like love and almost like an obsession, right? And that's what allows him to be open to the dark side, rather than just staying on, not being tempted and staying on the light side.
Well, so this is this actually brings me to, there's a moment when each of our characters has a vision, and Anakin has a vision of his mother, Shmi Skywalker. And she says, "You blame yourself, but you are more than a Jedi. You define your guilt." And he says, he talks about killing all of the Sand People in the desert, and after she dies, and he says, "I tasted only revenge when I killed so many." But then he goes on to say, "The only love I feel in my heart is haunted by what would happen should I let go." And to which Shmi responds, "Then it is not love; it is a prison," which I think is such a cool little exchange there, and of course, a premonition of how his heart is ultimately, though it does him credit, it leads to his undoing, right?
Oh, absolutely. I also feel like what's weird is that, oddly enough, these episodes in a weird way are kind of in a very like, and I guess it's lighthearted because it's Star Wars, but it's also a very healthy way of kind of explaining like what a good kind of love is, what love really should be for us as like human beings, not just in the Star Wars universe, but it's like it should be something. It's not love, that idea of like, it's no longer like love, it's an obsession, it's a prison, like I feel like that's a very like it's kind of like healthy ways of trying to look at these things,
Yeah. There's actually another story arc that I hope we get to eventually, that is the last appearance of Ambassador Clovis, where Anakin basically thinks that Padme is having an affair with Clovis, who of course is an old flame, but ultimately is a reformed separatist who has realized, that the separatist army is not have the galaxy's best interest in mind, and hopefully we get to that, but it definitely gets into some of that. But But I want to come back to Ahsoka too, right? Because Ahsoka also has kind of a premonition of what will happen to her. She has a vision of her older self who comes to her and says, "There's a wildness in you, young one, seeds of the dark side planted by your master. You may never see your future if you remain his student."
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I definitely I love that little nod, and of course, sure enough, we end up seeing. I mean, I don't know if anyone's spoiler alert to anybody who hasn't seen Clone Wars, but I don't know if we can talk about this, but ultimately, there is that story arc that happens where, with Asajj and Ahsoka, where ultimately Ahsoka is basically she throws away her Jedi title because she could, and I thought it just, and ultimately what her character ends up becoming further down the line with both final season of Clone Wars, Rebels, and then now The Mandalorian. It's really amazing to see how like the Mortis episodes really kind of set off. I feel like a lot of like the chain reaction of like that creates her ultimate arc.
Well, of course, and then you can see the connection of Ahsoka as we see her now, right after she has been revived twice now, so to speak, right? Because of course she's revived by Anakin and the father through the sacrifice of the daughter, and then the second time she's revived, so to speak, is she is pulled through the world between worlds by Ezra into that liminal space, and of course we also know that the father refers to this place where the Mortis arc takes place as a place somewhere outside of time, right? Which could also be referring to the world between worlds. But ever since that point, that is the point where she first makes her connection with Morai, who is the convert, who seems to carry a lot of design aesthetic and color schemes of the daughter.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And of course, that is something that I'm really curious to see if we see more of this play out in the Ahsoka series, because of course all of those hieroglyphics and things that we're seeing in the posters and all that are still very reminiscent of some of the things that they established here in the
How
Mortis
interesting,
arc.
because the daughter was very floaty. How interesting
Mhm.
would it be if her spirit was what became the Morai?
Yeah.
That would be very cool. I
Um,
dig it.
let's see here. Other interesting things. At one point, Obi-Wan says to Anakin, "The planet is the Force. Use it." What do you think is meant by that?
Well, I think that was partly created by the trio, though, because when they leave, everything starts crashing down, yeah, like never-ending story style, right? So I think once they are no longer the keepers of this planet, it sort of loses its force draw. I think he was pulling more from them
Mhm.
than he was the planet itself.
No, I kind of agree with that. Like that basically like those three kind of created like this physical it's the world between worlds, and of course the next time we do see it in Rebels, it's very basic. It's kind of like just this plane, this very simple plane with nothing in it. But like I feel like because these three kind of helped made the Force manifest in the sense of like there is like like a location, because let's face it, ultimately, the way that it ends is, like you said, the never-ending story ending, where we just get the blinding flash of light, and then everything's hunky dory, and they're in their ships, and it's like, hey, you were just gone for a quick second, like so. So because of that, I feel like it's it's kind of like the when Obi-Wan said like the planet is the Force, use it. I feel like that point, like they've started realizing like this entire space that they're in is all a manifestation of the Force, and it's all and of course and of course the Jedi's ability is all about how he manipulates and is able to tap into that Force. So I feel like that's what he meant by that. Just
Like Wanda with her town, right? Like she's
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna call out. This is something that is said. So Obi-Wan has his vision, and his vision is the first time he sees a Force ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn. And,
Right.
Whoever did that voice nailed it.
well,
by
it
the
was
way.
him actually. He came
It
back.
was Liam
to-
Neeson.
Yeah, Liam Neeson came
Ah.
back to play
He's
himself.
such a G.
But
Good
he
job being yourself,
says
Liam Neeson.
he says that this place is a conduit through which the entire force of the universe flows. This planet is both an amplifier and a magnet, which is interesting, right? Because we know it's like, well, which force? Is it the cosmic force or is it the life force, right?
Well, it could be like Luke's planet, right?
Which
When
planet?
where he's got his school. Like there's places
Mm.
in the universe that are just a little bit more susceptible to
Right.
or force sensitive, I guess.
Right. I mean, I know there's some old legends material about how Dagobah has so much life growing on it because of its swampiness that that's why Yoda chose it to hide, because he could be undetectable amongst so much life force on the Dagobah planet.
I
But
still think that this planet isn't quite that way though, because the way that everything just kind of fell apart at the end.
well, I mean, the father says it's outside of time, so I mean, I don't think it's actually a planet, right? It could just be a physical representation of the force itself, which makes everything that we see in it allegorical, right? The constant shifting
Yeah,
of night
okay.
to day, the way things regrow and are destroyed. I mean, it's like, you want to get really mythological or religious with it. There seems to be an intentional kind of reference to the wheel of samsara from like Hindu and Buddhist lore.
Well, if you really want to get religious, is Anakin the Antichrist? Everybody thinks he's like this, chosen one. Is he, I mean, I don't think in most versions of that, the Antichrist doesn't actually want to be the Anti, or they don't know, right?
Right.
I don't know
True.
what George Lucas's thoughts were or intentions were with that, but
I mean, he is still ultimately the one to bring balance, regardless of how he does it. Regardless of the chaos he creates by doing so, right?
like Thanos.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
Thanos.
Definitely. No, I was gonna say something. I totally forgot what it was. Darn. Shoot. I can't remember.
Antichrist, religion, the Force,
Antichrist.
Hinduism.
I will say that like it is. I mean, there is the idea of like, well, there is also like there's a whole theory that like Anakin's kind of like the Jesus allegory for Anakin being like, like it wasn't until like I was like much older that I realized like the idea of
yeah,
there being
Immaculate
no
Conception.
father
Yeah.
means that there is no father. There was no father for this conception to happen. So he was manifested by the Force. I mean, some people also argue that it was actually Palpatine that actually manifested the Force so that he was born. Some say that the Force just did crazy shit and there he is. But like, I mean, it could be interesting. I mean, even Yoda says like, a prophecy that may have been misread.
Yep.
So I feel like the idea of like, everyone is, touting and, saying that he's the chosen one, but it's like, what the chosen one to do what exactly, it's like, and I also like, and the idea of like, I also feel like this is also a whole philosophy thing where I feel like the Jedi and the Sith are both equally bad in a way, because the Jedi are trying to completely eradicate the Sith, while the Sith are completely trying to eradicate the Jedi. When if you actually understand balance, you understand that one cannot exist without the other. In the darkest darkness, there is always a little light, and then the brightest light, there is always a little shadow. So like,
well, and see, and that's interesting too, because Lucas, has both said that the light side and the dark side are not like good and evil; they are more like chaos and order, right?
Yeah.
So that the dark side is chaos, and the dark side spawns from selfishness, versus the light side spawns from selflessness, and creates order, through caring, right? And that's always kind of interesting. Of course, when you look at it through that lens, then even the Jedi Order loses sight of its selflessness because it is trying to constantly self-serve by perpetuating its existence, to the point that it loses touch with that kind of core compassion idea. We are going to need to move on, but I just want to bring up a couple of so the ways that the arc ends is, of course, the father dies in order to depower the son, and of course the daughter is dead as well, saving Ahsoka, as we said. But he says to Anakin after he helps wipe his mind, and when he's dying, he says, "Nothing is set in stone for things to." As nothing is set in stone for things to transpire, all must be forgotten, is what he says when he wipes his mind. He says, "My son broke the laws of time. I die, my heart broken, but knowing your destiny. You are the chosen one. You have brought balance. You will do it again, but beware your heart."
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on that?
I feel like it's the way I feel like it's that he can bring balance if he thinks logically and precisely. Obviously, like if emotions can make us do some crazy things, we can think illogically, and sure enough, that emotion, his heart, is what is, as we see in episode 3, is absolutely devastating and destructive. So like I feel like that's what ultimately what heart means is is basically to throw away your emotions and it's basically what he's trying to say is you can bring peace so long as you throw away your emotions.
What do you think, Tracy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with that. I think that even though the father says that the son, broke all these rules by showing Anakin the future, I think the father has obviously seen it as well. I think that I think he probably knows that there's a good chance it's not going to be thwarted, but he wants to plant that seed that it can be. And I think he's hopeful that it can be. And maybe one of the reasons why he was hoping that Anakin would stay on the planet was to avoid what was to come.
Yeah. I mean, it's also interesting to knowing that, okay, so the sun is in theory trapped in whatever this liminal space is alone. We don't know if he has some way out or is able to find some other way out of that liminal space. But ultimately there is only a being of selfishness, no longer a being of selflessness, unless Ahsoka is destined for more, which I'm sure, hopefully, we will see more of this play out in the Ahsoka series down the road. But anyway, so that is our talk about the Mortis arc. Actually, do you have? Is there any comment on any of this in the chat, Tracy? Before we move on.
Oh, well, the planet's been compared to the wormhole in Deep Space Nine. It's been compared to the Matrix.
Oh yeah.
Anakin's been compared to a Dalek. Kevin called Dave Filoni Dave Baloney by accident. And people like my glasses. So
excellent.
And Kenji has a fan who's enjoying everything that he's saying and talking about Star Wars poetry.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Well, great. Thanks all so much. We're going to wrap this up. Of course, we have the Obi-Wan series, which is coming up in May. We are going to be prepping for that in our upcoming episodes. We're also going to be prepping for Star Wars Celebration, which is also towards the end of May, May 26th through the 29th. And we're going to be looking at some of these other essential stories that look at the relationship of Anakin and Obi-Wan, leading up to the rematch of the century. Per Kathleen Kennedy, I'm holding her to that. But that I think will wrap it up for our Star Wars discussion for today. Let's see here. Tell me, Rod, do we have our friends here yet from Geek Beast? They are here, so we are going to transition. We're going to bring on the folks from Geek Beast for Crosstalk, as we do every time. We're going to transition into the next show as they make their way into the room, and I'm stalling until they get here. And there they are.
What's going on?
Welcome, Geek Beast. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How y'all doing?
Doing okay.
I think I actually hopped into y'all's stream earlier today. I was like, oh, it let me straight in. I didn't know that. How y'all doing? What's going on?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Your face.
We got you, Trey.
Yeah,
All right, sorry
you.
about that.
Let's see here. Okay, so the question for you today, I'm looking for the question.
It's what's your favorite Star Wars game of all time?
Oh, KOTOR, easily.
man.
KOTOR.
Oh,
Wait,
KOTOR?
First
Who is
KOTOR
it?
or second
How is it not
KOTOR?
the- First.
Knights of the Jedi Knight 2. Jedi Outcast. Come on.
KOTOR. No, it was legendary.
No.
Nobody had ever seen anything like that when it came out. It was groundbreaking. Nobody had seen action RPGs like that. No.
Yeah. I think mine was the Atari arcade game because I
That one was good though.
1983.
That
That was my game. That was my game. I spent so much money in that game. I probably bought the whole entire cabinet by the time I was finished.
So you're talking about the original Vector Line graphics
The Vector Line
cabinet.
graphics game. Yeah.
Yo, I thought I was seeing the future as a kid when I saw
Me
that.
too. I was like, wow.
this is
look at
blowing
this.
my mind. I'm in the trench.
Well, and of course, then they had the Empire Strikes Back version too that added in the Hoth battle too, right? Where you get to try and take down the AT-ATs.
Yep. You know my overall. I'm gonna change my pick right now. You know what my favorite Star Wars game is?
What's that?
Lego Star Wars.
That's
Hands
solid.
down.
I'm not gonna even
Low key, that's really good. Yeah.
I won't even bash that one. That's actually a solid hit. Like I will say, like the number of time, like I just have a vivid memory of like all of us just sending R2D2 into a chasm over and over and over again. Just 'cause
That game was amazing.
We were losing pieces or both.
Lego Star Wars.
So I'm gonna say to you, Kenji, I have not played Jedi Fallen Order yet. I understand, and I have heard so much, and I've watched videos of it, and I'm like, okay, I got to get to this eventually. I just have not upgraded consoles yet. So
I've played it. It's really good. I actually really enjoyed it.
Nice.
Well, and of
I
course,
haven't played it yet either. I need to. I really do need to.
There was a little bit of news related to that, right? Because they have recently they've released the Cal Kestis lightsaber.
It's gone now.
In Galaxy's Edge. It's gone? They sold it out?
Oh, are you kidding me? Like it apparently sold out like really fast. Like because because they only sold like a certain amount outside of the park at the outpost in downtown Disney, and then the rest of them are in, and then the other amounts were sold online, and then the rest are sold in park only. So unless you have that $1,000 to get into the park, drop another $500 while you're in there for that lightsaber. I mean, damn.
I mean, I was also just kind of like, okay, so they got what's his name? What's his name? Monaghan? What's the actor's name?
Oh,
Cameron
the guy
Monaghan?
from
Cameron Monaghan to pose with the lightsaber in the park. And it did make me wonder,
Shameless.
like,
Kid from
are they
Shameless.
prepping for, like, you know, is he gonna make a cameo in Obi-Wan or something like that? Because I mean, that would be kind of cool.
That would be kind of cool.
As long as he keeps the man
character's
bun,
ending
that's all I care about.
His character's ending is kind of open-ended at the end of Fallen Order. I mean, we're supposed to. I mean, it's already been confirmed that Fallen Order 2 is going to happen. So, I mean, it would be cool that maybe his cameo in he could have a cameo in Obi-Wan. It would make sense because of the timeline. It would make sense.
And Guy's a great actor, honestly. I mean, I didn't watch Gotham a lot, but from what I did see of it, he had a cameo. He had I think a couple of seasons where he appeared kind of as an incarnation of the Joker, and he was pretty solid, actually.
He was really good on Shameless. I thought his was some of the strongest storylines.
Oh, absolutely. Like he's like the Paul Dano of the Star Wars universe. He's like that.
Oh my god,
that underrated actor that people have only seen him in like a few things, but when you finally do see him, you're like, oh, that guy, he was in that thing, and you remember how freaking awesome he is. That's who he is.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna come back to Star Wars video games for a second. So I just want to do a shout out to Jedi Power Battles. This was on the PS1, and this was like the first time in a video game when you could like use the Force. Like you had Force abilities, you could grab shit and do Force push.
Oh, that's awesome.
Other than that, it was like a hack and slash action, lightsaber game. But but it had Force powers built into the controls, and you could fight as one of 4 Jedis. I think it was Plo Koon, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and
Adigala.
Ayla Sakura or something like that.
Adigala.
Adigala. Okay, yeah.
But it was Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. It was Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan.
That's right.
Oh wow.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, that led eventually to the Force Unleashed and all that, where they kind of continued to expand on all that.
The Force Unleashed was supposed to be a really good game, but the camera is horrible in it.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
But it is pretty cool in Force Unleashed when you bring down a Star Destroyer from orbit into a planet. It's pretty cool doing that.
That is pretty cool.
You're like holding like the sticks like this, and you just feel it as you're doing it. It's so much.
So they should remake that game.
You know what? I know that if they should bring back any game, they should bring back Bounty Hunter 1313, the one that the
canceled. Made it, yeah.
Boba Fett game. That's what we need to see.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is maybe not exactly Force Unleashed, but I could imagine them using similar ideas and doing a game around the Inquisitors. Now that they're really kind of bringing the Inquisitors to the forefront, right?
Yes.
And kind of more of, obviously the Inquisitors are not Sith, but getting more into, well, what is the state of the dark side during that era, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to give a big shout out to Rodney because he had mentioned something, and that was Star Wars Pod Racer. Because the most casual of people could hop on Pod Racer. You don't really have to know any lore. You just hopped in and just raced and just had a really good time. And for a sub market for a racing game, that's just something that I don't think anybody saw coming regarding putting like a Star Wars property towards something, and then it delivered on top of it. I mean, the graphics were insane. The sound design was mind blowing. It really sounded like it did in the movie, and just straight up just fun, So it was a
I remember at the same time as they released the home version, they also had a in arcade version of it.
That you can sit in. We had a full cabinet you can sit in.
Yeah, and you had a whole full cabinet where you're sitting in, and it was like 4 giant screens, so you could have four people racing each other in real time. And it was, I remember like going to Dave and Buster's, and they, you had the little throttle things, throttling your left and right engine.
I don't know if you guys have been to an arcade lately. I have a niece and nephew, so I go fairly regular like boomers. But if you guys have played the one that it's like the machine itself is like a Death Star, and then you go inside and it's just like the total like curved screen and everything.
Yes.
That's a badass arcade game.
Oh yeah, that one's great too. And if you and that one's actually really cool because if you're on a surface level mission and if you hit the boost full acceleration, you'll actually feel wind against your face, even though it's kind of
cool.
like, don't you have a canopy? But whatever.
Right on.
So immersive because you're like in this thing, and then you don't see the outside world, and you're just like,
Yeah,
So what are you guys talking about today on Geek Beast?
Oh man, there's a ton of news. Apple TV has streaming service to win Best Picture at the Oscars.
Yeah.
Coda.
Yeah.
I've never seen that, so Apple TV won Best Streaming. Zack Snyder fans sweep Oscar fan voted categories with this.
How did that happen?
Yeah,
Who's
and
voting?
it's not with the Snyder Cut, which is Army of
we
the
know how
Dead.
this happened, right? I mean,
Yeah.
They put they
my
made a
Oscar
mistake of putting it
Snyder
on
had
Twitter.
Bruce switched to American Idol, so I missed half the Oscars.
So we're talking Oscars
Oh.
today. That's what we're talking. Oscar
Right.
love.
oh, that's
And we might address that super big elephant in the room. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, you know,
Definitely addressing the elephant in
someone
the room.
someone was commenting
That'll never
that
happen.
someone was commenting that this year's Oscars, of course, brought a lot of deaf representation into the room, both for the Oscar for the deaf actor, as well as bringing
Right,
lip
yes.
syncing into everyone's living room because everyone was lip syncing.
He came
Yeah.
to our
Or no,
little
lip
con.
reading. Sorry, lip reading.
He
Yes.
came to our little convention in Escondido, California, and was the kindest, most wonderful man. And we honored him with an honorary membership into the 501st because he created the Sand People Tuscan sign language, right? He was
Did
the
he?
person
Yeah.
he was the Tuscan
What?
Raider who was signing in The Mandalorian. And
Huh.
and it was so emotional seeing him get so emotional about being inducted into the 501st. And
Mhm.
he was just so lovely. And I'm so happy for him that he
Mhm.
won.
He won because of you all inducting him. That's why it happened.
Yeah.
That had to happen first. But I'm excited. It was. And I'm pretty sure everybody deaf heard that smack.
If they didn't hear it, they sure as hell felt it.
I did
Will Smith
too.
left his fresh French. That's what he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
West
does
Philly.
this mean that he's gonna have to move with his auntie and uncle in Bel Air?
Yeah.
Really? I saw you post that.
Got in one little fight. So this is going to close up our show. So if you'd like to hear about this and more, definitely stick around for Geek Beast. But before we completely sign out on this, I also do want to do a shout out for Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is a phenomenal movie. I got to see this actually on Friday night. I believe it is opening more broadly on April 8th. But it's not Star Wars or anything. It's Michelle Yeoh. It's I mean, I guess there is a Lucasfilm connection because it also stars
Use your words.
Ki Hui Kwan, who of course was the actor who played a Short Round, making his comeback now like 40 years later. It is
Oh, I
directed
remember
by the
him.
Daniels, who did Swiss Army Man.
Okay.
It
And
is
Data from Goonies.
it is a wild multiverse like art film that is so ridiculous and so out there in left field, but
Good.
is like, I mean, I could tell you things that would spoil things, and it still would not spoil anything for you because it is so clever and heartfelt and smart and bizarre and weird. That is my glowing recommendation for this.
All I can think of is like when you're telling me how it's like a multiversal story. I just see the picture of Jake Gyllenhaal from Far From Home, just being like, and that multiversal story that you came up with is exactly the kind of shit that people will eat these days.
I've heard people reference Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in terms of this film. Did
Yeah.
you see the connection?
Really?
Okay.
I do in terms of how ambitious it is, right?
Okay.
It's got a big sci-fi central idea. There, if you're a fan of Rick and Morty, there's certainly shades of that in terms of once you deal with the idea of multiverse and infinite possibilities and what that means philosophically. It kind of digs its heels in there too. Yeah, highly recommend it. Oh, also, if you're fans of Marshall Club, like I am, these are a bunch of YouTube guys who basically have been doing kung fu movie homages for the last like 5 years, and they were brought in to do the choreography, and it looks great. And that, you know, it's like there's a lot of wonderful, passionate people who worked on this film, so do support that. Okay, and with that, we are the Pod Squadron. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're here on the Geekish Network every other Monday night at 6:30. Please follow the Geekish Network on YouTube and on Facebook. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks for joining us here on Monday nights. Check the schedules for all the other great shows on here throughout the week. Of course, Geek Beast, which is coming up next. Thanks on the flight deck to Rodney. And we are the Pod Squadron. Please check out our content on podsquadron.com. Like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For podcast subscriptions, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app. I am at Chinese Pirate _ on all platforms.
I am a hot nerd girl on all of them.
Thank you, Kenji, for joining us, our guest host tonight. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Kenjinator. You can also find me on TikTok, where you can find me doing a lot of celebrity impersonations, a lot of comedy stuff there on TikTok at Kenjinator as well, KenJinator. You can find me on Twitch at the Kenjinator. And on Sundays, I do a Dungeons and Dragons stream with my father, who's the DM, and he's an amazing writer. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend you check it out. It's on Sundays. Usually it's on Sundays at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Right on. And of course, stick around for Trey and Chuck. And yes, all wings report to base. Course laid in and prepared to make the jump to light speed on my mark. And remember, the truths we cling to depend on your own point of view. Only the Sith deal in absolutes. Good night, everybody.